and it was the continued series. I hold the court with the EPA, National, Eagle, EPA came. We were the only ones that the town hall or meeting they were allowed to do for several weeks, and I've been doing it every. We want to hear from you, and Darren and I try to do them together as frequently as we can. So welcome everybody. First of all, I want to thank Brownstown for their hospitality. Sharon Maurice, the Brownstown supervisor, is over here. And Chief Watson, the police chief, is here. I said, look at him. He's such a troublemaker. And Chief Roma as well, the fire chief. So I really call attention to that. And then we also have a number of the Brownstown trustees, Patrick Killian. Raise your hand, Patrick, I saw you, but where'd you move? Oh, you're over there. Patrick Killian, Steve Allen, Roger Jones, Dave Chapman, and, okay, that's, I think, did I miss any of the other Brownstown trustees? Do we have that? And then Alex Garza is here from the County Commission. Did I say Roger Jones? I said Roger Jones. And then Bob Lafayette's also here from the Brownstown Police Department. So thank you everybody for being here. And Mayor Miller from Flat Rock just walked in, so thank you. Here, I just was on the phone an hour ago. So thank you. And others are going to be coming in. I'm told Jamie Thompson, the Republican state rep from this area, may come. I really like it when everybody comes, and I really like it when we have good, civil, respectful conversations where people can ask questions, you can disagree agreeably, and I think we need a lot more like that in this country today, period. I really want to go more into answering questions than talking at you, but I will talk for a couple of minutes about what's happening in this country. Last week we passed a budget in Washington, D.C. that I will be very candid with you, I did not vote for it. Because and there's a lot of disagreement between the House and Senate. No Democrat, I don't lie to you, no Democrat voted for the budget in the House of Representatives because the kind of cuts that it will require. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. I'm going to say this to you. The President said we will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. I'm going to look at you, and before I talk about Social Security, I'm going to tell you that the budget that they passed last week requires $880 billion be cut out of Medicare in the Energy and Commerce, Medicaid in the Energy and Commerce Committee. And you cannot do that. Do I think we need to eliminate waste and fraud? Yes. And where do I think we should start? At the Pentagon. And after we do the Pentagon, across from mine, I've said to him, Chip, why do we have to give the billionaires tax cuts? That takes away from revenue. They're not, maybe Elon Musk, maybe we could also save some money by cutting some of the contracts he's been signing for himself. They are doing these kinds of cuts. They want to cut billionaires' taxes, which is going to take away from revenue, which is why we're looking at some of the cuts we need to do. And I'll talk about this more, ask me questions, but when the President says, I will not touch Social Security, when you close 1,000 offices, fire 7,000 people, when you tell seniors that they cannot call offices or get help on a telephone line, when the acting director of Social Security says agency down. And when the Secretary of Commerce says their seniors can afford not to have a Social Security check for a month, and if they complain they're a fraudster, you are touching Social Security, you are hurting seniors, and it shows that he's got a billionaire cabinet that isn't in touch with the seniors that I work with every single day, who live paycheck to paycheck, Social Security check to Social Security check, to get the food they need to put on the table, pay for their medicine, and some of it needed for housing. So don't tell me you're not touching Social Security. It's going to be a really horrible month of May. And I promise you I'm going to do everything I can to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid and tell you what's happening. Let me talk about a couple of other things. Tariffs. So I am actually somebody who does say tariffs are a tool in the toolbox when they are used appropriately. But when you take a meat axe and just take it across the board, alienate countries, not just a few countries, but 60, 70, 80 countries who have been our allies for decades, and say we're gonna impose tariffs, you're increasing the cost for all consumers, making enemies out of our friends. That is not a strategic use of tariffs. A strategic use of tariffs is when you have China, that the communist China of government is subsidizing the production of electric vehicles. They are using slave labor, not paying some of them. They are manipulating their currency. They are trying to destroy our industry so they can come in and take over. And I'll be damned if we're ever going to let them do that. And that's an appropriate use of a tariff. It's at 145% right now. Joe Biden agreed, Donald Trump agrees, and I agree. You put a tariff on a country that's cheating like this and trying to hurt our industry. Not on Canada, which is our friend.
On this side, so if you do want to find a seat, please feel free. And if there is an ability to get a few more chairs, just to make sure we can get everybody to sit down, we're working on that too. Thank you.
You know, and I think I'd rather start let Darren talk and get into Q&A. I'm still very worried about, I don't know what's going to happen. I had a good talk with the Secretary of Transportation this week and said, hey, I want to work with you. I want to protect our domestic auto industry. I want to keep it strong. Lee Zeldin from EPA was in Michigan. He went to Flint. I said, hey Lee, if you go to Flint and you don't understand what's happened to those children, you're going to get, and he did agree and said that he was going to continue to protect the children of Flint. I'm going to tell you, I'm very proud of the fact that in the bipartisan infrastructure law, I got money to get the lead out of every pipe in America. I don't think any child should ever be poisoned. And I don't want to stop fighting for that. I'm not going to stop fighting to get a cloud cleaned up, to get the 2 Superfund sites, to protect the Great Lakes. There are and by the way, some people may not like EVs, but I'm going to tell you something. Some of you are young, and some of you are more seasoned like me. And we remember the 70s. I was very young. I was not young. But the gasoline prices went high. This domestic auto industry did not have small cars. And our domestic auto industry lost a decade in competition. The global market wants EVs. We need to produce EVs. I am not going to let us lose our progress being at the forefront of innovation and technology worldwide. The domestic auto industry put the world on wheels, and I'm going to make sure we stay at the forefront of the world. I'm going to turn this over to Derek, because I'm sure there are lots of specific Q&A. And I don't believe in doing written questions and only selecting. I want everybody to be able to ask a question. I am going to ask you to be respectful. Darren.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you all for being here. Great to see you all. I'm Darren Dingell, proud to serve as your state senator. We have done a lot in the last 2 years in the state senate, and we're going to continue to do a lot of good things for Downriver, even though the power imbalance has changed a little bit in Lansing. But one thing that you all know that I care deeply about are our schools. As a former teacher, what I care deeply about is making sure that we can continue to educate our youth and invest historic revenue and resources to the students who need it the most, but to make sure that our educators have what they need and our kids can thrive in our classrooms. One of those critical programs is the free breakfast and lunch program that we expanded here in Michigan. I was the author of that program, and I'm very proud that we did that for the last 2 years. It is a combination of our resources at the state, but also federal resources that go to that program. And so we are going to be keeping a keen eye on the potential cuts that may come out of Washington, D.C. We'll see, right? The budget process is starting in Washington, D.C. But there have been discussions because they are going after the Department of Education, they're going after every single department in Washington, D.C., and they're looking at ways that they can cut programs that, quite frankly, benefit everybody, to only give a tax cut to the rich and the well-connected. That is something that the Congresswoman is on. She's watching it every single day. She's watching back every single day. But those decisions in Washington, D.C. impact all of us at the state. Because if I don't have the resources from the federal government to spend on the school meals program, we're not going to be able to fully fund that program. And that's scary. Because that program has not only benefited directly hundreds of thousands of students here in Michigan, but that benefits all of you as parents and grandparents who are taking care of those kids. Whether or not you could afford that meal, that's not the point. The point is we're taking care of any potential stigma that those kids might have to face. For the kids that had free lunch and the kids that had to pay. For any of you who work in schools, you know that there is a stigma for kids that are taking on a free lunch program. We eliminated that. It's a barrier that did not need to exist because our kids are going to school. We're going to make sure they get a breakfast and a lunch, and we're going to ensure that they're healthy and fed so that they can learn. That is the #1 priority. And so, even on the parent and guardian side, you all can just send your kids off to school and not have to worry about packing a lunch. That saves you time. That saves you money. Those are programs that are critical, and we're going to continue to fight on that front. But again, we are in a position where we have to now work with a different party in the State House. And I'm fine with that as long as we can continue to share those goals of investing back in our communities. That is the most important thing that we're all advocating for. So I will not, under any circumstances, allow a cut to education here in the state of Michigan. In Lansing who have proposed doing that. They passed a budget out of the State House that cut funding from schools. It is unacceptable. $5 billion, by the way. That was their first opening proposal for how to fund schools here in Michigan. Now, we are not done, right? We've got multiple chambers that have to approve of that process. So I chair the education budget in the state of Michigan on the Senate side. So again, under no circumstances am I allowing a cut to schools to come across my desk that I'm going to sign. That will not happen. But I want to warn you, that means this might be a long and protracted budget process that is going to cause some anxiety among residents in the state of Michigan. Because we may not get certainty out of DC that quickly. That's one component of it. But the second is that if we do not get to a point where our House Republican colleagues agree on a budget, it's going to take some time. We do have an obligation per state law to pass a budget by July 1st. That is our goal. We've done it the last 2 years. We have to do it again, in my opinion, to give certainty to our communities. But the Constitution requires it by September 30th at the latest. And so I would prefer that we follow the first law that we put in statute and get it done by July 1st. That's the goal. If it doesn't happen by then, though, we might have a long and protracted several months to get that budget done for both schools and for everything else. That's something that we're still dealing with. So that's my number one concern and my number one priority at the moment. And we'll see how the rest of our budget process with the state plays out. But I also want to be clear on one thing. We do have money for our schools. I want to be very clear on that. We have the resources to invest in our kids. So that's why when I hear these ideas of cuts, there's no reason to have a discussion on cuts. We have $2 billion additional dollars per our last consensus revenue estimating conference, which is like a politician for the budget. Here's what our analysts and our economists believe how much money we have. We have $2 billion extra dollars to invest back in our public schools, which also includes lottery money. I want everybody to know that. The state lottery does send that money to the schools. It might not seem like that's exactly the case, but we send over $1 billion from the state lottery to schools, which is a lot, but we spend $20 billion overall on the education budget. So it's only a small portion of the overall budget. So that's my number one concern. Other topics that are up here, then I want to get to questions and answers as well. So we are discussing investments in roads. That's a big topic of discussion in the state capitol, which we all know we want to invest more in our roads and our infrastructure. I'm very interested in that topic, but I want to be also very clear on this front. Investing in our roads cannot be done by cutting alone. That is not possible. Unless you want to cut very important programs to pay for it, which I don't think it's a good trade-off to cut healthcare to invest in roads. Those are not good trade-offs to me. Can we find some potential savings in the state budget? Yes, we can. But it should not, again, be on the backs of regular people only to help fix other problems that we have. So we're having a discussion about what that should look like and how we can, again, invest in our roads. Another thing I want to talk about, I know all of you care deeply about the Allen Road grade separation in the city of Woodhaven. We're going to stop those block trains once and for all. I'm very excited about that. Something that started before me, but we picked up the baton. The Congresswoman and myself spent many hours in talks and negotiations and discussions.
John Dingell started.
Yes. It's been a long time coming. But we found the resources to help kickstart this process. Now I want to recognize and call out, it's been a long time. We got County Commissioner Garza here, who's been a fierce advocate since he's been put in that position to help us get to this point. And County Executive Warren Evans announced last week that we are starting construction on that project in the coming weeks. Actually, I heard it's today. They started some stuff today, which is very, very exciting. But I want to be very clear, there are two phases to this. We have to dig and move a bunch of pipelines and utilities that run underground the railroad, which is what's happening now. That process is now beginning. Once those pipelines, utilities, cable, Wi-Fi, all these different things get moved, then the bridge work will begin. And so we are finally starting. It's been a long process, I know, but I can't wait to drive under that underpass and never get blocked by the trains ever again. The second thing I want to highlight on this regard is something that Congresswoman and I fought for, because we said, hey, Allen Road's not enough. We can't just do the bridge on Allen. So in the state budget in 2023, I secured $20 million at the state level to go apply for a matching grant at the federal level, because part of the federal infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed had money set aside to do exactly this, to fix railroad grade separation issues across the country. But you can only get that federal money if you have local money to match it. And so I said, hey, I know it's a lot of money for a 4th Street grade separation, but it's something that people have been talking about for decades, well, before I was alive. And why don't we go try? So we secured the $20 million from the state. We told the Congresswoman, hey, can we go try to apply for this grant? Good news, the Congresswoman came home and brought us $73 million in that grant. We are now in the process of working towards a grade separation on 4th Street as well. So it's not either or, it's both. It's both. But I want to caution, as we're watching the federal dollars, we want to ensure that that federal grant can still come home. The Congressman may have more to talk about that at some point, but that is something that we are keeping on the new administration in Washington, D.C. to stick to their promises and ensure that those federal grants come back to the communities who won those awards. We'll see, right? She might have more to comment on that, but that's something that if we can get those federal dollars here, we're building a second bridge, we're creating more jobs, we're solving another problem, and we're doing exactly as the federal infrastructure law intended, which is to use state money to match federal and to solve local challenges. So that's about all I've got right now. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions you'd like to have answered. So I'm not sure the process, staff, how do we want to do this?
There's a mic here.
There's a mic here. If you want to line up, it sounds like we're doing a line up. Come ask your questions, and we'll do the best to answer those questions. Please just tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Heidi Ma. I'm from Oklahoma, Michigan. Today I'm here representing Joey Foundation. It is a pediatric cancer foundation, and in honor of Joey Xu, a very young boy, lost his life to pediatric kidney cancer when he was only 10. And I want to thank Congresswoman Dingell very much for your support over the years for the pediatric cancer community, and especially sponsoring the bill, the Give Kids a Chance bill. And unfortunately, the bill right now is stopped. So the reason I'm here today is asking you to continue to support this bill in the next make-up in the Congress this month. For the people who do not know this bill, it includes a program so that companies, the pharmaceutical company could study combinations of new cancer drugs for kids with cancer instead of just one. Almost all cures will request cocktails of different drugs. Unfortunately, it is not the case right now. The bill also includes a reauthorization of the Pediatric Priority Review Voucher, a program that has resulted in over 60 new drugs for kids with cancer and other life-threatening rare diseases. So the Give Kids a Chance Act will save a lot of lives of the young children, and it will not cost the taxpayer either. Okay. So this bill will be in front of you in the Energy and Commerce Committee very soon. So I hope you will vote.
It's my bill. So thank you. And I'm going to ask everybody if they can kind of keep their questions to a couple minutes so everybody can, but I'm going to say this to you. I've spent my life working long before I ever got to Congress on these issues. Started the Children's in at NIH. We all need to be worried about what is happening with federal research grants, what's happening on programs like this. NIH has just literally paused almost all grants. And that's research that's being done on Alzheimer's, on cancer, diabetes, rare disease, and what we need to be investing. But what's even scarier, I've spent a lot of time with the researchers. I mean, one of the grants that was put on hold immediately, like within 2 weeks, was that the VA hospital has had people fired at both hospitals. But research at the VA that was going on for burn pit, University of Michigan and the Ann Arbor VA have some of the most important research going on for veterans that was doing burn pits and mental health. A lot of very critical research doing, it's around the country. I know the real specifics at the University of Michigan. We need to continue this research. This bill lets the drug companies do it. I'm going to do everything I can to keep it moving. I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I will, since we had a markup last week in committee, and some people wanted Democrats to vote no on everything. And I said, I can't do that. This bill was not noticed last week, and we didn't get to any of the health bills. Unfortunately, we will in May, and I'm hoping this bill will come up in May. But I said to my colleagues, there's a little girl, Charlotte Woodward, that it's an organ transplant bill, and she has Down syndrome, but we passed this bill out of committee and in the House twice. And I said, I'm not going to look her in the eye and tell her I voted no. We need to give people hope. We need to be working together to fix so many healthcare issues. We had agreement at the end of the year for many bills that were in the end of the year, and then Elon Musk said, no, any Republican that votes for this. So we didn't get many things that you care about, from telehealth, just an extension of telehealth, which is critical for rural areas too. I had the Charlotte Woodward bill. I had John Molinar and I have a bill. Someone died, was not the only person that died. There was a patient at the University of Michigan because they had test bone graft material for TB, and it went to her brain and she died. And actually it was the sister of someone who worked for John Molinar. And I went, John, we got to keep this from happening. That was in the end of the year bill. I can't let this. So I promise you, working to ensure that future generations are taken care of. Period.
I'm Dingell, Senator Campbell. My name is Dylan Davis, and I'm a senior at Carlson High School. I'm 18 years old. And I came here today because I wanted to talk about something that's near and dear to me, something that I've discovered over the last 4 years, especially in the last two elections, is that people my age just aren't interested in politics, and it's showing. They don't get out to vote. You can see the media. If they did get out to vote, this country could be looking much different right now, which I wish it was, but unfortunately not. What do you guys think is the answer for young people? What can we do to begin to attract them to politics, to begin to attract them to become interested in not just their community, but their state, and the politicians that lead us in the Capitol, in Washington, D.C.? What can we do, me, you, all of us in our community, to begin that shift towards the younger generation?
So I'm going to let Darren answer, but I'm going to say a couple things. One, you cared enough to come tonight. Thank you. And young people are 25% of our population and 100% of our future. So we need to listen to you. I think a lot of people are tired of the partisan bickering. They're tired of not seeing the issues that you care about be fought over. You know how I got involved in politics, and I was a Republican when I married John Dingell, just for the record. John Dingell was more conservative than Bill Milliken was on some issues back then. I got my first paycheck, and I went, where's the money I earned? Taxation without representation. Help us know what matters to you. And we got to make sure we're addressing those issues. I'll let Darren.
Tell me your name again.
Dylan Davis.
Dylan, thank you so much for being here. You're graduating this year?
Yes, sir. I will be attending Oklahoma State University for aviation.
All right. Congratulations. So, I have to think about my journey and my start in politics. So I started as a young college student, and that's how I first got engaged in the political spaces. I don't come from a political family. My dad's a UAW auto worker. My mom's a lunch lady at Flatbush High School. And for me to be doing this today really is a testament to the American dream, right? That if you work hard enough, if you put your mind to something, you can get it done. That dream is not real for everybody. I want to be very clear about that. It should be available to more people. But we've got to inspire people to be involved in politics. I think that's the number one thing that I think a lot about. And right now, there's not a ton of inspiration to look at when you're watching the news. My first political action was to protest a $1.8 billion cut to education that Rick Snyder put in place in 2010. So I went from protesting an education budget cut to leading the largest investment in education in Michigan's history, now as a senator. Because I decided to show up and be engaged and involved in the political process in some kind of way. And so I would invite you to be involved now. Do it in Oklahoma, but it's going to be a little hard in Oklahoma. Maybe you can learn, maybe you're already learning to fly, but you can fly other places and do some political engagement there. But I think about this from the lens of getting organized on your college campus. So that's another thing that I did. I did a lot of organizing in school. I did internships. I interned for Congressman Dingell. That's one of my first political starts. That's how I learned.
Not me.
No.
I'm not that old.
For the John Dingell, the chairman, the dean. And that's how I learned a lot, was learning from him and watching Debbie and watching them interact with all of us and our constituents. Then I interned for a state representative campaign. He won. And I really learned a lot from those experiences. So then when I became a teacher, I thought I was going to be a teacher for a long time. And then I decided that with no funding for my kids, I had to fundraise to get textbooks, that maybe I should just try politics. And I ran, and we won, and here we are. And so I would just encourage you to get involved in whatever way you can. Invite your friends. We have a fellowship program that we'll be running this year. We're running a fellowship program next year as well. Just stay in touch. I try to bring as many young folks into the political process as well. I got a handful of them here. Raise your hand, my young fellows and former fellows. They're right here in the front row. They don't want to be seen. But that's about the best advice I can give. And hopefully we will have some opportunity for inspiration. I mean, I started thinking about politics because of the Obama election, because he gave me hope and inspiration, and I saw something. Certain politicians today, but I don't see it from our current, president, obviously.
We need to listen to you though too. So you gotta help us make sure we're doing a better job. Because it's not all on you. We gotta do a better job of understanding what young people want to see from us. So thank you. And you do that by coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman and Senator, for always coming and representing our area. I have volunteered for Erica Geis. I have volunteered for John Dingell. I have volunteered for Debbie Dingell. I have been on Darren Camilleri's staff. I have been on Commissioner Bashham's staff, and I've been on Alex Garza's staff. I care very deeply about what goes on in Michigan. I have a disabled daughter. When Trump was elected first time around, she was on SSI, and he took a hatchet and swiped it across the board, and she lost this small amount of money she's allowed to live on and health insurance. We hired a lawyer. It took us $10,000 to get it back. I'm terrified that's going to happen again. And the reason why I'm standing here is I'm terrified he's going to do the same thing to Social Security. Can you please make it easier for me to sleep at night?
One of the things I won't do is tell anybody I can guarantee it's going to be okay. Because I can't. But I'm going to fight like hell. And many people don't understand that Social Security not only takes care of seniors, but it is also there for those that are on disabilities and for children that, for different reasons. It's the only source of because 3/4 of our seniors in this country were living on the street, didn't know where their next meal was going to come from, they didn't know how they were going to get health care. And that's how it passed. And many people had pensions that were safe that are now, people's pensions are no longer safe. People had saved their three-leg stools, pension, savings, and Social Security. Last week, I had a senior that just broke down in my arms because she was scared about her Social Security, which I talked about. And I'll say it again. Please do not tell me Social Security is not going to be cut when you do what you have done, which is close 1,000 offices, fire 7,000 people. Seniors cannot get through to anybody at an office right now. I have talked to so many people in the last 2 weeks that have waited 7 hours and gone to an office. There's nobody there to help them. When the head of Social Security threatens to close the agency down, that's just wrong.
It's frightening.
It is frightening. And when somebody says, if you complain for a month, it's okay. You're fraud. Everybody can live without a check. That's not most of America. People are on Social Security depend on that income. We are going to fight like hell to protect Social Security. We're going to do everything I can. Everybody needs Congress that they have, I don't care what party it is, accountable for when we actually get into what's called the reconciliation process, which starts when we get back and where those cuts are going to come from, and you need to hold every one of us accountable for our votes and what's going to happen. Because I know that people in this area that do TikToks and say Social Security is not going to be tough, people are using scare tactics. I'm not using scare tactics, I'm using what you hear on cable television every night, what you read in the news, and what the Secretary of Commerce himself has said. So don't tell me you're not going to, and President Musk, who has said, you know, it is clear, it is documented, they are closing 1,000 offices and have fired 7,000 people. That's pure fact, not fiction. Unfortunately.
I think this nominee case, my daughter is Sarah Hamlin, but I'm going to get a little bit older. She is nonverbal, severely mentally handicapped, and she goes to medicine center over there. Darren, I listened to you, I think it was about a month ago, talk about cuts to districts. I live in Flat Rock. She goes to point out both districts are being cut. My daughter only has a school because of IDEA. Before that, they were in mental institutions. And I guess I'm not looking to see what you're going to do because I know you're going to retire. I'm just looking for some advice because she doesn't have a voice, and I can be that voice, and I feel very lost right now on how to be a voice for Sarah and her community.
Well, thank you, and thank you for lifting up for Voice, right, being here today to do that. I think a couple of things. We have vastly different value sets with some folks in DC and some folks in Lansing when it comes to some of this funding. Now, there are some areas of funding that I hope and pray we should find common ground on, and that includes special education funding. We've done in the past. There have been Republicans and Democrats who come together to secure record special education funding. We've done that in the state level as well. I can't speak to the DC atmosphere on that topic, but I would hope it's the same. In the last 2 budget cycles, we fully funded special education in the state of Michigan, which is still not enough, as you probably know. It's still never enough because we have a lot of resources that we still need to catch up on. So that's something that I will continue to fight for. And I'm trying to warn folks about this deadline because I am not letting cuts happen to our kids. And so if that means that there is not an education budget for a while, so be it. Because we should not be cutting your daughter's education funding whatsoever. And that's the type of line that I'm going to be holding in the sand. Because the minute that we cave, and I've seen that from some folks in the U.S. Senate, where they cave and those cuts happen, right? I do not want to see that happen to our kids. And so I don't have more reassurance just yet, but just know that we are working around the clock.
What can we do as parents of these children?
Hold every single state rep, state senator, Republican and Democratic, accountable. There are 2 different issues here. One is the IDEA program, which has never been fully funded, which I've been fighting for at the federal level for some time, and now we're going to eliminate the Department of Education, and we don't know where those go. They're going to go over to HHS, and so I got to keep fighting for that funding. And everybody, you need to talk to Republican and Democratic members of Congress and Republican and Democratic state legislators. And then when it comes to Medicaid dollars, I'm going to be doing an event with the governor. I did one already with the governor at the University of Michigan and the heads of all the children's hospitals. 75% of the patients that go to Children's Hospital in Detroit use Medicaid. She and I are going to do another event on Thursday. People need to understand what Medicaid pays for. And we cannot cut Medicaid. You remind me of a parent. I don't want you to cry. I was at Michigan just going for my asthma checkup. And a mother with a child in the wheelchair just started crying and said, please promise me I'm going to be able to bring my child here and you won't let them make any cuts. We're going to fight like hell, but everybody needs to make sure every single elected representative understands what is being cut or why they can't cut it, and the human face of those that are being impacted. And we won't stop fighting.
My name is Eric Carlson. I live in Woodhaven. I'm a retired school administrator. I think everybody here agrees with most, if not everything you're saying. Now, most things are preaching to the choir a little bit. Because I know you're going to try. I know you are. But the Democratic Party will get gold rushed every day. It's one thing after another, and I'm not really sure, other than hanging on until November of next year, what else can be done? What constructively can be done? You mentioned the schools. I think 14% of the budget in Southgate, when I was there, was from the federal government. And now we have a Secretary of Education, who in a hearing the other day, announced that she was all for A1. And someone had to tell her it's AI, not the state's office. We're in a bad spot. We're in a bad spot. So, my question is, what can we do other than, it's fine to say, we need to do this, we're going to fight. I believe you will. I think what you're doing is commendable. We're a minority party in Congress, at any rate. And polls, national polls show a popularity rating sometimes under 30% of the Democrats, too. So something's got to be done differently. And I don't know where that message is. I don't know if it's not getting out or if it's getting out and people won't like it, parts of it. I'm for what you're for. I think everything you've said is admirable. I think your late husband's legacy is unbelievable. But right now, every single day you're being attacked on every front, and I don't know what to do other than to say, I hope and I pray we can hang on until November.
So, I'm going to say this. I don't disagree with you, but one person can't do it. It's the collective we. And I think there are people here that don't agree with you and me either. I'll start there. We have to, I tell people it's a five-pronged plan. Except we got a problem even today. We need the courts are the first that we need to be in. And we've been winning, but now we're seeing the executive branch not listen to what the courts are finding. So are we in a constitutional crisis? Perhaps. I talked to Jamie Raskin today about several things. We got to legislate, educate, advocate, and communicate. And I'll tell you what, I know something about President Trump. He doesn't like low approval ratings. So people have to make their voices loud and clear and make sure he knows. Going to win in 2016. Some of you, there are a lot of new faces here. People thought I was crazy. But I knew he was going to win because I go in the union halls. I go in the veterans halls. I go to the farmers markets. I listen to people and I know they're mad and I know they're angry and they're worried about a whole lot of stuff. Democrats have to do a lot better job of listening instead of lecturing. You know why Donald Trump won this time? Because people, the young man that spoke, just didn't come out because they didn't think anybody cared. They didn't think their vote made a difference. Now, right now, I think a whole lot of people are understanding votes have consequences. So, I'm not going to quit fighting. We all got to fight together. We got to push back. We can't give up. We got to give people hope. And I got to believe in democracy. And I got to believe that our democracy is going to win in the end. But we can't be silent. We cannot let people, when we want, what is democracy? Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, due process. And all of us have responsibility to I know.
We all want that. We all want the freedoms. We believe in those.
We don't have
when you say fight, though, when you say fight, you mentioned the courts. I mean, today you met with the guy from El Salvador and said,
It's very scary to be with what's happening, which is why I called Jerry. I'm not gonna lie to you. The fact that the president said anybody can be picked up, we have lost due process. That's part of the process. People say, why did you vote for this bill or that bill, which were Republican messaging bill? Because they don't have due process. People are being picked up on the street. They've never been to a court. They don't have anybody that can just be. We can't let that happen, but we have to fight back and be those voices. Well, I'm not. Here I am. I'm doing what I can. I went on campus and stood with the Black Student Association last Thursday and wanted them to know their elected officials that are with them. And I said last fall, you may be visiting me in a camp, and everybody said, oh, you don't really mean that. I hope some of you will come get me out of it if I do end up in it.
But it is true. It is true. You, me, and all of these white people up in here can end up deported like they deported you from Europe. We don't forget about this. What we got to do. What we got to do right now is we got to take a fight up into that ring, a fight that they ain't never seen before. Now let me tell you something about fighting. My daddy was told me. He said, look, you step up in the ring with dogs. Don't bring a dog. He said, you bring a goddamn cat. You know that case up in that ring, it's not going to go down. That fight ain't going to go down the way you think it's going to go down. Now, I've been working as a superhuman for a long time. I've been in many fights. Fights that I can't win. The fights that the Democrats been putting up cannot win. We're not fighting the right words. We're starting to fight late. We're worried about what we say. When you get into a fight with someone fighting dirty, fighting with his eyes, you got to get down dirty. So the cat said, "What's the ring?" You can best believe everything that cat got in him is going into that fight. And guess what? That's what a cat always does. I'm a cat. I'm a cat. So when I look at the Democrats when they fight, I get mad as hell. Because you're starting to talk now, but when you're supposed to talk. However, this talking should have went down when the coup started. We didn't want to mention that word coup. We allow these people to just simply walk on up into the White House, sit down, and bring all these foreigners in here, bring all these coup nassats up in here. And guess what? They stole the shit out of the Pentagon house, and now they're running down the street. What are we going to do?
So let me just, thank you so much. So one of the things I think a lot about, a couple things. So we do have power at the state level. Okay, we are not powerless at the state level. We have the state senate, and we have the governor's mansion, and so when it comes to these state level discussions, we still have some of these levers of control, and we're fighting every day to do what we can at the state level. Congresswoman is doing all that she can in her role as our congresswoman, but I want to say something as a younger elected official who's a Democrat, who's been learning from folks like Debbie for a long time. Yes, sometimes I do think we need new tactics, absolutely. And I'm watching it at all levels of government, as I'm watching a lot of other elected leaders who are not digging in enough and fighting back hard enough, because I think that we got some folks who are playing a different game than we're playing. They're playing a completely different game. And so I just want to say, it is on our mind, especially some of these topics in Lansing that we're talking a lot about how best we can negotiate, organize, and push back on these, anti-democratic ways that people are taking over some of our institutions.
Let me say this right now. I want to thank you for doing a good job in Mr. Mayor in office. The Democrats did do a good job for the last 4 years. He didn't do a good job telling people about it.
I agree.
Yeah.
don't fight like you stand on the truth, I don't give a doggone who it is. If I'm standing on the truth, I will beat down the lie day and night. If I'm standing on the truth, what we need from the Democrats, what we need from your MAGA friends, we need to start teaching Americans the difference between a dictatorship, an authoritarian, and democracy. This is one of the play cards that your forefathers was talking about. Please.
Thank you, sir. We're going to go on to the next person. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Yvette, and I have many issues. One, I did go to USM, where I was diagnosed with many conditions that nobody else could diagnose me with, that forced me into early disability retirement. I spent half my life working with special ed children, which I dearly miss. I have a big heart for the education system. My last name is Perez. I'm scared to death for my children. My husband was born here. Their parents were born. His parents, their parents. You don't like my last name, you're throwing me out of here. Who's going to help my kid? Who's going to help me? Who's going to help the person that didn't do anything wrong? That scares the hell out of me. Like, I lose sleep over it. Okay? Like, I don't want to cry about it. I lose sleep over it. I lose sleep over losing my Social Security. I didn't want to go on Social Security. I had to. I'm scared to death about that. We hear about, I'm going to fight that fucking maniac in the head of our United States right now. Excuse my language, but that's where I'm at right now. Who is doing something about him? Nobody. You said it yourself. The courts laid down the law. You have to.
We're not done. Let me just say this to you. We are far from done. And I don't want you to think there aren't a bunch of us figuring out the next step. But I don't need to read it on the front page of the paper.
And I appreciate that. And I truly do. And it's just maddening what is happening right now in this country that I've lived my entire life. That everybody in this room deserves to be treated like a human. We paid into our Social Security.
You earned it. It is an earned right.
That's where I'm at. I have so many more things I can say right now, but I know there's millions of people behind me. I'm afraid. And I know that probably everybody else in this room is too.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for lifting up those stories. You know, I think a lot about the gentleman from Trenton who was taken outside of Arthur's Middle School and is currently sitting in an ICE detention facility, who had a work permit, right? I think about that case as well as the students at universities across Michigan and across the country who have valid visas who are being issued, deportation notices. I think of Mahmoud Khalil, who is currently in a detention facility in Louisiana for daring to speak out on Palestine and challenging some of the things that are happening in this country to stop bombing children. I mean, there are so many issues right now that we are seeing play out that are very scary about the foundations of our country. And yes, the courts, we're going to keep fighting in the courts, but it seems like the courts are not exactly saving us in this moment either. And so it's going to continue to take advocacy from the people to continue to push back, because the only way that they'll change their minds right now in this moment is if it becomes unbelievably unpopular, and we've got to keep pushing on that front.
Can we get rid of Muslims?
So he is not one of the things we're working on. And I want to tell you, we are fighting. Okay, we lost a court case today, but we are winning in many of the litigation cases. And Like, I don't know, I mean, the reason you're afraid, you said there were two citizens at the Canton courthouse last week. Two advocates went with an undocumented citizen who had a ticket, a speeding ticket, and the American citizen got thrown to the ground and handcuffed because he had the wrong last name. Now, he had ID with him, and they undid it. And I've gone to the ACLU, and the ACLU did a letter late Friday, I don't know if it's public or not, it is now, to the Supreme Court of Michigan saying, can you please get ICE away from our courts? We are not going to stop fighting to win in every one of this, and we have to do it collectively. But if we can, look, I think it's human to be afraid. Some days I get afraid. I get really afraid. You wouldn't believe some of the things that happen to me. But no one's going to make me terrified. No one's going to make me shut up. No one's going to make me stop fighting. And that's the spirit we have. And you become a president when you keep your courage, you keep your fight. When we all fight together, we don't let them win. And when it comes to President Musk, he is not official government appointee, and you can only be in that position for 90 days, and he must be pulled out of it by May 30th, and we are working very hard to make sure they do not violate that rule, and Elon Musk is gone.
Thank you.
Talk to me.
I apologize for my.
No, you're good. Thank you. Hello.
I'm here to talk to you about the child care crisis in Michigan. I'm very concerned for our future, for our children. I have owned this business for 35 years. I've served many families. I have high quality programs, and I feel right about that. I'm concerned that we don't have. There was a study done at Wiley, which is the division that I fall under for child care licensing. So I'm held to a lot of mandates that affect my budget. I would love to pay my people more. anymore. I retained my staff, I had a quality center, I have a family here in IC that came to my center. I had a second generation family coming to my center. I'm here to advocate for children. When you were talking about Social Security not being able to get a phone call in, I accept subsidy payments of the parents that come to my program, which means I live in the state of Michigan, they can't get through on the phone with anybody. At the beginning of the school year, I went back $5,000 in payments that was owed to me for care I already provided for children. But those parents couldn't get a hold of anybody to get the subsidy money. I continue to service those parents, and I took it upon myself to find who I could find at the CDC to get the payments made. So it's a big mess. It's a big mess in the state of Michigan. I want to do something to help, and I'm asking for you to stop have a seat at the table so that people can afford daycare in the state of Michigan. We can improve our economy, and people can go to work to make fun of work. And the more we work, the better we let it down and have to together fight the people that are trying to suppress us and oppress us right now. That's the head.
I'm Jack Nicholson. I'm a retired pastor, 45 years, and I'm here to talk about foreign policy in Gaza. I've been in Palestine 7 times. I have close relationships with Palestinian Christians who've been there since the first breath of the church, right from the very beginning. And in Gaza right now, I'll throw out some numbers. These are in the last week. 50,810 Palestinians have been killed. Too many. 1,670 Israelis killed. Too many. And 115,000 Palestinians injured, and a similar number, like 6,000 Israelis have been injured. Right now, U.S. aid is not getting into Gaza. It's blocked militarily. Our government doesn't fund it. I just got a text a few minutes ago from our hospital in Jerusalem that serves kids needing dialysis and cancer treatment. They're still doing it, but that can't keep happening. And what can we do? How are we working at that? And this has been going on for a little while. Oh, let me just add, Israelis and Palestinians both deserve dignity, justice, security, and
Jack is right. Everybody we need peace in the Mideast. And what's happening right now, I call for a ceasefire. We need to find a way to bring people together. And there are so many Palestinian children and families have died. It's horrifying. And anti-Semitism is also really real in this country. We have to fight hate whenever and wherever we see it. It's not really easy to deal with this White House, but we're trying. I meet with the Arab American community all the time. I've talked to the Secretary, believe it or not, I've talked to the Secretary of State. Probably doesn't like talking to me. But we can't give up, and we all have to understand the destruction, the killing, the hurt, what is happening there. And quite frankly, it's not just the Mideast. What's happening in Ukraine is also a reflection of this president's policies. I agree with you. I'm going to do everything I can. We're trying to make sure that there is money there to do it. Lebanon is also, the Lebanese are very much. I'm somebody who thinks we need to be working with our allies, not alienating our allies to address these problems.
My name is Nick Chewy. I live in Trenton. Thank you very much. coming out and for all of us to participate in democracy. This is a wonderful forum to do that. The issue I want to bring up is immigration, which has been touched on. And the Trump administration's policies are applauded by many of them. I know some of my best friends advocate for what's happening. I ain't one of them. I think what's happening to individuals, to the dignity of individuals, and the due process that they are afforded by our Constitution is just being obliterated, and I think it's abysmal. So that's my personal opinion. But I have two questions for both of you. One, I know you're both advocates for immigrants and migrants in our community where you serve. What are you doing different, if anything, since the new administration came in power versus what you've done previously? The second question is, do you see opportunity not only for you as elected officials, but for all of us to engage in this particular issue and make some positive changes?
So I want to say that we've needed comprehensive immigration reform in this country for decades. Republican presidents and Democratic presidents have tried to find common ground. We actually had an agreement led by a Republican senator last year, and Donald Trump told the Senate not to support it because he didn't want to give a win on immigration reform. You know, when you talk about child care and senior care, when you talk about small businesses, when you talk about the hospitality industry, when you talk about our farmers, many some adopting, some have work permits, some don't have work permits, are the backbone of many places. By the way, most of us, our fathers and mothers came from someplace. I could just go on with this subject forever. I used to care about immigration reform and say we needed it, but I'm having too many people every single day that are being impacted by what is happening. 22 students at the University of Michigan have had their visas revoked, 2 at Easter today. And in not one, and you don't understand how this is happening. There is the State Department maintains a database, thank you, of students that have visas. And they don't notify the school that a student's visa has been pulled. The school has to check it several times a day to see if suddenly a visa is missing. They're not notifying the school at all. The students, if they apply for the student visa on a Gmail account, they don't use it. They don't know until somebody calls them. They don't know if they're suddenly going to have ICE at their doorstep. They don't have due process. They don't know how to appeal it. One of the kids, it was last Friday, got told that their student visa had been pulled 2 weeks from graduation and scared that ICE was going to come after them. The dean of we're trying not to use gender, the dean of the school got the student out of the country before anything could happen and said, I will make sure you get your diploma. There's just so much. I've been working with a whole lot of people. I've learned and met a lot of new people. The prosecutor who I said, we think I sent a letter that I got my other colleagues from Michigan to send because it's happening at all the schools last Friday, asking questions. Why is this happening so randomly? What is the criteria you're using? What happens when they get it? Do they have due process? Can they appeal? I went through a whole list of questions, and we think that none of them, not a student at the University of Michigan that anybody can find was connected to the Gaza protests. And the prosecutor believes that one of of the students who lost the visa was merely a victim of domestic abuse. And that was her interface with law enforcement. And because she had interface with law enforcement, that's not right. A undocumented in Van Buren was physically assaulted and threatened and went to the police for help. And did she get help? No. I showed up and grabbed her. That is not right. I'm doing these cases every single day. What am I doing differently? I'm on them. I'm talking to the ACLU. I'm talking to the Michigan Immigrant Coalition. I'm talking to lawyers. I'm hiring lawyers. I'm doing everything I can to help people who are being sued. I do not want to see anybody in this country that is guilty of a violent crime has attacked a law enforcement officer. I thank our law enforcement for keeping us safe every single day. There is someone that I helped get a work permit last year who wrote me and said, "You helped me buy a house. You helped me with this job. But I'm afraid to go out of my house. I will not let my kids go to school. I don't know how I'm going to eat." You want to talk about a really pragmatic situation? There was an article about 2 weeks ago about a Canadian who had a work permit in California and got thrown into detention, and she wrote about the experience. We have 2,000 nurses that come from Canada every single day that operate our Detroit hospitals. They're afraid to come to work. They don't want to come to work. We don't have hospitals in Detroit that are going to be able to take care of people. We all need to make this our cause. Due process matters. Comprehensive immigration reform matters. It is all of our problems, and we all need to be working on it. And I'm going to just keep working it every single day and raising the human stories and telling people about it, because we really have to get this fixed.
Echo those comments. I don't deal with immigration as a state elected official, but people contact me anyways, and so I deal with it anyways. And one of the things that we do is I call Debbie and I say, "Hey Debbie, we got another one, we got another issue, we got another problem," and we get into it and we do what we can. We call and contact the right people. I've dealt with more immigration issues in this first quarter of this year than I have my entire career. That's how quickly we're seeing these escalations. And so we're fighting back and pushing back because people do have rights under this Constitution that we all live under. Whether you are a citizen or not, you are still under the rights of our Constitution. And it is important that we follow those due process rights, because I'm very afraid of the next level where there might be U.S. citizens deported, where we've got, and there already are those cases. You have the President of the United States today talking about sending U.S. citizens to a different country to detain them in a jail. What are we talking about here? If this was happening in any other nation on earth, we would be condemning it together as Americans and saying that that type of leadership in that country is falling into the hands of a dictatorship, and that is something that we should all be condemning. But it's happening here, and we don't necessarily know what to do, because we have some people in our country who are supporting that, which is crazy to me. So, we're on it every day. I'm calling her all the time to give her new information about these cases that come across my desk, and we're trying our best to solve them to the best of our ability.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 12 people in line, so the last person in line, I don't know who that is going to be the last person in line. Okay, so that's it. And if everybody can I want everybody to have a chance. And we'll keep our answers shorter. I'll try not to get intense.
Hi, I'm William Mason. I live in Riverview. I'm a former teacher. I was very involved with MEA as a teacher. I was president of our local in Riverview. And I'm currently president of the Wayne County MEA Retired. So my commitment to public education continues on, as do all the members that are in both those groups. When we endorse a candidate, we go through a very rigorous process in which the candidate goes through a screening and recommendation process. Our questions are focused on public education and how they plan to I find that Republican candidates do not even bother to go through the process because the teacher associations in our state, they don't like them, and so basically they say, screw it. I'm very proud that we were endorsed, I believe, I actually was on your panel. Because, and you have followed through with that. I think a lot of people here don't know what the Republicans proposed for the budget as far as I'm not even exactly sure what it was at the first proposal or negotiation. I don't know, but if you can explain that a little bit, I think that would be very edifying for people in this room. Secondly, for Representative Dingell, I agree with a lot of the things that you said as far as Democrats needing to get better. However, I think that our entire media center is so skewed to the right. Whenever I go into a public place where they have a TV playing, it's always Fox News. And that is trumped, and a lot of the local channels now are owned by very conservative outlets. All of the digital media places are predominantly very conservative things. It's hard to fight when there is. So I would encourage the people who have the means in this country to establish more outlets that are more balanced and sane.
Thank you. We're gonna answer your questions. We can keep it rolling.
So the last thing then is your actual question is with all the obvious things that this administration is doing that is not only unethical and immoral, but illegal, why isn't there more of a call that he should be impeached immediately?
We have not passed the budget just yet, but the House Republicans voted and passed on their version of what they want to see out of next year's budget. They call it a shutdown prevention plan, even though we're not shutting down the government, so I'm a little confused about that. But in the budget, they proposed $15 billion of spending for schools. Sounds like a lot of money. We normally spend 20. 20 minus 15 is $5 billion in cuts. That's what they proposed. They had put 0 lines into the at-risk funding, which is $1 billion alone. 0 lines into the transportation budget. I can go on and on. And so there's a lot there that we've got to keep fighting against. Again, differences of values. We'll see where we land. There's been no final budget passing just yet, but they did pass it out of the House. It's not going anywhere in the Senate.
Many will recall Donald Trump during his first administration was impeached. And we're about time there right now, so we need to put our energy and focus on where you can make a difference and focus on winning the House back in the Senate, getting enough votes in the Senate is where you got to be right now. I will remind everybody, I am in the New York Times a year ago. Donald Trump doesn't like me. I wish he could know me by face and name. He does. And I'm not afraid to stand up to him. And go read the New York Times op-ed why I said it's important to stand up to Donald Trump. So you got to do it targetedly. Let's keep trying to move the line if we can get people to. Thanks.
Questions. First of all, thank you for all the work you do, Senator Palmieri, who I know, and Congresswoman Dingell. Thank you for all your work you do for us. I have 2 questions real quick. The SAVE Act that was just passed, For those of us who are married and are divorced now and want to vote in the next election, my birth certificate has my maiden name. I just keep hearing a lot of conflicting information. And my driver's license has my married name, my birth certificate has my maiden name, I'm sorry. What's going on with that? What do I need to have so I can vote in 2026?
So I think the good news is that the SAVE Act won't pass the United States Senate. I moved and spent 3 weeks finding my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, and was in a state of panic. And so people don't know what the SAVE Act is. Again, it's another labeled bill. It is already illegal in this country to vote if you are not an American citizen. That is the law. And the bill that did pass, I voted against it, last week would require your birth certificate to match your name, or you have to, it's not clear. There are many people that believe there should have been an amendment that said that you could show that your name had been changed from your birth certificate because of your marriage license, but there is not a clear amendment. So, and also, if you're overseas, stationed overseas, how can you go in and show your birth certificate to register to vote? Seniors that are currently on the absentee voting ballot list would have to go in and show their ID. You know, how many 80-year-olds who have a married name for 50 years are going to be able to find all of that? It's an effort. That's good that you can. It is a bill that was designed to discourage voting. I voted against it. I don't think someone who's not an American citizen should vote, but I'm tired of bills that have misleading names and make it harder to vote, not easier. Thank you.
What's going to happen with same-sex marriage? Are we to be concerned that that's going to become illegal now?
So I believe they codified at the federal government level, I believe. So I believe it's codified from DC. We'll see what the Supreme Court decides on a lot of these issues. I would hope that they maintain, right, that everything should just be the same that it was as before. However, in Michigan, it is currently in our Constitution that same-sex marriage is against the Constitution. So there have been some efforts to repeal that from our state constitution in the event that the federal Supreme Court decides to reverse that right. So there have been some discussions that it potentially could be on the ballot in 2026. We'll see, but I would watch out for that. It is still law of the land. Same-sex marriage is still legal, but they want to potentially add that additional protection at the state constitution level.
How are you guys? So I saw on social media that this was a Downriver town hall. I apologize. I'm glad that I wasn't thrown out already because I'm State Representative Jamie Thompson. I'm a Republican. I represent this district. I came because I share the same concerns that a lot of you do. And I know that people talk a lot about working bipartisan. So I think it's really important we do. And I have two questions, one for Deere and one for Representative Dingell. The question for Representative Dingell is something that's really important to me. I tried reaching out to your office a few times with your cell phone and talked with your staff member. But my question is, if we wanted to move legislation about a do not resuscitate order, so if a family member or a patient has a do not resuscitate order in their medical record, if they were to cross state lines, and the next state that they go into doesn't recognize it, and they get forced to be a full code, is that something that we could legislate on a state level, or could it be something that we could do on a federal level? I have a person with my father.
I think you could probably pass it at the state level. I think it would be very difficult right now in this climate to ever do something at a federal level on that case. And Jamie, I hope you did hear that. It's nice to welcome you, and I do work across the aisle, but I resent it when people say that I'm lying about Social Security not being touched. When I don't know if you were here, and I talked about 1,000 offices being closed, 7,000 people being fired, the acting director of Social Security saying he was going to shut down the agency, and the Secretary of Commerce saying that anybody who complains about missing a
I did hear that, but I don't know. What I want to know is I hear a lot of propaganda from both.
I don't think that's propaganda. Everything I just gave you is a fact.
Many of my constituents, Social Security has cut. That's my question.
Actually, the reality is for some people have missed checks for, the Social Security office is now declaring people dead that are alive. I've got so many Social
I think it's all a big mess that doesn't get figured out. But I would love to
Could you
hear.
do me a favor and don't go on social media and tell people Social Security?
Well, we can't scare people. We can't tell little old ladies that they're going to get kicked out of nursing homes.
Next question.
Thank you very much. So, because of inflation and because of the cost of living and everything that we're facing, we put together a plan that had a lot of bipartisan support for the roads plan. It does not raise taxes and gives $3.1 million without touching the school aid fund because we backfilled with $5 million.
Let her finish, sorry.
What would the Democrat plan be to fund the roads so that we don't have to keep dealing with the roads continuously?
So I mentioned this at the beginning, I don't know if you were here for this, but there have been plans that were passed by House Republicans, including Representative Thompson, that did put together a plan for $3.1 billion for funding. Great. But I'm somebody who looks at the details. And so when you cut to find that $3 billion, some of those cuts are probably okay. When we look at I support some of those ideas of removing some of those tax breaks for big companies that haven't created the jobs that they have promised, so I agree with that. But when we look at cutting things like healthcare that is not on the table, or we're looking at, well, it's a vague cut. I didn't say that you did. I'm saying that you don't have a plan from your House Republican plan that details the $3 billion in cuts that would need to happen. And so, hey, let's have a discussion. I believe in finding efficiencies in state government, but we cannot fix the roads alone by finding $3 billion in cuts. That is not a plan that works. And so what I'm proposing from my own office is that we're looking at PA 51, which is the way that we fund a formula that all the distribution of funds go back to our communities. Places like Wayne County are hit the hardest by the current PA 52, I think it is, not 51, formula, where we don't get the type of money that we should based on the people that we have. So that's step number one.
But this plan would give 80% of that funding to our local communities, like what you.
Yeah, so I looked into the details today, and it actually doesn't give our fair share of that money back. And so we've got to ensure that if we're focusing on infrastructure, which I support, we're not cutting essential services, which I do not support cutting those services, and we do need to find the revenue to make up for it.
See,
I think.
I don't want to cut essential services.
And that,
Absolutely. I stood in line because it was a Downriver town hall. It wasn't labeled as a Democrat town hall.
next speaker. Thank you. All right. Just tag me on TikTok when you put it on. Thank you.
By the way, I want to tell everybody that 42% of the state government is federal dollars. And so you need to worry about what's going to happen to federal dollars and what programs are going to be cut. So I hope that Representative Thompson will help us fight to save federal dollars for the state.
Actually, one thing federal dollars. So President Trump cut $1.7 million from Flat Rock to fund a project on Freeland Road. If you want to help us save that money, that would be fantastic. Next. Thank you.
Brownstown is here letting us host Noel and Thursday. Can we do a couple questions at a time? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you both for coming tonight and having this town hall with us. My name is Madison Marilas. I'm a 27-year-old voter for Brownstown.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I mentioned my age because my entire adult life has been Donald Trump either running for president or being president. I want to go back to the state and also just talk about election security in general. 4.5 years ago, we heard the right, talk nothing about the election being stolen, which we know factually is not true. And last year, the entire election cycle, we heard Donald Trump saying, if you vote for me, you will not have to vote again. You won't have to worry about voting. We heard Joe Rogan say on his own podcast right after the election that Elon texted him in the middle of the night on election night and saying that it was done. I want to know, one, if anything is being done at the federal level to investigate these claims, to ensure that we have secure elections in 2026. And also, going back to the state act, I do want to just know, I think even if it doesn't pass in the Senate, it worries me that this is the start of stripping voting rights in general. I think it starts with needing a birth certificate and then goes to women can't vote at all and vote on the minority list. And I'm really concerned that we're not going to be able to have free and fair elections in 2026. I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Okay, can we get the person behind
Yes, go ahead.
We're going to do 2 questions at a time.
Done.
First of all, in whatever second language you have, and most of us do, because none of us are here in America when America was America. Tu voz y tu voto va a ser todo con este hombre. El silencio justificado. Your vote is your voice. If you don't vote, you get the silence and they get the voice. Remember that. First of all, thank you so much, both of you, your gems. My dad taught me that, my grandfather and grandmother taught me that. I became a geriatric social worker. When I was 20, somebody passed that was 42, and I thought, oh my God, they're old. Why are those people crying? Now, I'm here. I'm 74 years old, post-op. And I had to come and let you know that it starts at home, people. When you hear of children coming from other countries that are put in an orphanage or a home, and they don't have shoes to wear for the winter, get your family together and buy them shoes. Send them shoes. My family did it. 98 pair of shoes, brand new shoes. In 2 weeks, we sent them home. That was, yep. Do it, and thank these people for the hard work they do while you're digging in and doing your part. Whether it's elderly, baby, it's going to affect us all. The babies, the elderly, healthcare, our veterans. I have so many veterans, teachers and their family, doctors. Do your part. Dig in. Do not let go.
Thank you. So we are attempting to pass the Michigan Voting Rights Act here at the state level to ensure that we have those types of protections at the state level as well. Because I'm afraid of the Federal Voting Rights Act going away and being potentially overturned by the federal courts. We passed it all the way through the House committee last term, but then if any of you were watching, we had a little bit of a meltdown in the state House, where Republicans, including Rep. Thompson, walked off the job, actually, for 2 weeks and did not show up to work. If any of you didn't show up to work, today you'll be fired, okay? People like her walked off the job for 2 weeks. We couldn't get anything done. She should have been fired, and I hope that there's some accountability for those people who did that. We got people trying to come lecture me at our town hall. If she wants to have her own town hall, she can go have her own town hall. These types of events, when it comes to the SAVE Act and other types of issues, I think the filibuster is going to save us from the SAVE Act. In the U.S. Senate, but we got to keep pushing at the state level to ensure that we can protect those voting rights as well. And to your point, our last speaker, yes, it does start with all of us, right? The power of the people is always going to be the most inherent thing that we have here in this democracy. So please continue to show up, participate, find ways to give back. In the absence of government action, that community-based action will be something that you can get, whether it's through your church or a nonprofit organization or whatever you can do to fill those gaps. We do need people to come together right now. Hey, Beth.
Thank you. Good to see you both. I so appreciate you being out here. But you gotta forgive me there because I'm going to direct my remarks to
Okay.
a good congresswoman. I so appreciate your passion and vehemence and your hard work, and I appreciate your recent embrace of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. I think you two are a powerhouse there when you connect. And my request for you is to elevate the voices of the new leadership in the Democratic Party. It's a very specific example of, in recent past, the establishment Democrats have fought against that kind of energy and dynamism. And we end up with, for instance, Representative Henry Cuellar, a Texas Democrat who the establishment fought against his primary opponent, who would have been like an AOC, and he was one of the Dems who voted for the SAFE Act. So my request for you is to help those voices who want to be out there, the AOCs, the Jasmine Crockett's, and others, to have a greater audience and have leadership opportunities. I obviously believe in institutional knowledge and experience. I'm 65. And I just want to say that, you have a great voice and a great opportunity to elevate those new voices. So, thank you.
My name is Canoe Guy Younglow from Flat Rock. I'm here to talk about the Flat Rock Dam proposal to be removed by Karen Clinton Metro. They're asking the federal government for $40+ million tax money to tear it out, kill all the wildlife, marsh will go away. $4 million to maintain it. Why do they want to tear it out? The property owners along the lake there, and the rivers have no law. And it's been there for 100 years. Fair shape according to the survey. $40 million to tear it out and ruin the environment. But on our dime. I don't get it. $4 million to keep it maintained. I live right upstream from it, about 7 miles. And they worked on it sometime, I believe, in the 70s. But my question for you is if any of them grant proposals, if you had any power to stop them.
So let me say this. First of all, no decision's been made on that dam.
Yes, I'm aware.
And there's a feasibility study going on right now. Some may call it something else. I'm working closely with the mayor and the trustees who sent a letter and have asked questions. I'm working with Dingell and the DNR, and we need to really ask a lot of questions, understand what the impact is going to be. Now, I have introduced dam legislation because none of us want to see another Midland dam either. Dams have to be maintained, but you're right, there's a difference. So no decisions have been made. I'm not a final decision maker, but I'm studying the issue and making sure that everybody's getting a fair hearing and we're looking. And I actually talked to Jim DeSena, and I had a long talk about it. So no decisions have been made. Okay.
Just one more thing. If anybody wants to visit that wetlands, get a hold of me on Western Drive Love Canoes in front of that. And I'll take anybody up there. See the eagle nest and Mars.
Thank you. They're great eagles. And I want to answer the other question about the Constitution is very clear that a United States president may only serve for 2 terms. A constitutional amendment. We haven't passed the ERA in 3 decades because they can't get all the states to approve it. Do I take it real that he wants to? Yes. Our constitutional scholars, I even believe this Supreme Court, which surprises people at times, will never let it happen. There are a lot of people paying attention. I don't discount anything that happens, but rest assured there are a whole hell of a lot of people that are paying attention to what he is saying and what he wants to do.
And just on the Flat Rock Dam, my staff and I are studying the issue. It's a Metro Parks question. We're in conversation with them, City of Flat Rock, working through all the making sure I get all my facts correct before we do anything on this. But I just know that we are on top of that issue as well, paying attention to ensure that we're making an informed decision. I'm not a decision maker either, but in terms of just my advocacy, I want to make sure I'm doing it the right way. Kurt, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Berta Van Rocio. Thank you, Senator Camilleri and Congressman Dingell for being here. What I want to say, this administration, President Musk and his minions are attacking every aspect of the federal government and American life. Many people today have spoken of frightening and heartbreaking issues that they are facing. I would like to speak real quickly about protecting the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge and all our public lands and environmental regulations and the Environmental Protection Act, including the Endangered Species Act that John Dingell initiated. We're very concerned about all this talk about monetizing public lands. These lands belong to the people and we should be able to enjoy them. The Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge is within driving distance of 7 million people. And studies are now showing that time spent in nature, even as little as 4 hours a week, is a beneficial impact on mental and physical health. So thank you.
Camilleri for everything you do. And I totally agree with you. This is not just your fight. This is everyone's fight. Stop him. Number one, we have to vote for just Democrats. Too many Republicans have even changed their voices because Trump told them to, which is ridiculous, and they're not representing us. They're representing him. They saw what happened to Liz Cheney, and they're afraid to go against him. Another thing is we have to get involved. We have to call, we have to write, we have to see what they're voting on, and let them know how we feel. And I know these Zoom calls are really great, but you're only talking with people who feel the same way that you do. We need to get out in these rallies. The weather is getting nice, and we need to go to these rallies. Have you seen what happened that one day on the vacancy? He doesn't like to see people talk against him. And that's what we need to do. The only thing I want to say is I would like to know where we can find out about the rallies. My grandson and some of his friends now want to get involved, and they need to get involved. I agree with him. The younger people are saying the Democrats are working with them. Well, what are the Republicans doing? They're destroying every agency that is helping people and protecting us. And it's getting scary out there.
So thank you. In terms of the advocacy rallies, there's a bunch of good groups over on Facebook. I would check them out if I were you. Downriver 734, is that United? Is that right? Downriver United 734 is one of them. But also the various Democratic clubs exist. So we've got some representation from our Democratic clubs, including Trent Dems, Brownstown Dems, a few others as well. Indivisible groups. There's a lot of activities, and all that information is being shared on those pages. So I would just check in on that front. In terms of listening to others' opinions, Debbie and I talk to folks who don't agree with us all the time. I would say that continue to advocate to your Republican state representatives, which we do have several here. You saw one of them today. I think it might be the first time that she heard a different opinion today, so I think that's a good thing. Keep calling and advocating to ensure that your voice is lifted up to those individuals too.
We're going to fight for the wildlife refuge for all the public lands. I'm invited to Secretary.
I feel like I don't need this.
Okay, so I'm a high school teacher, and if you're looking, they don't like the mic, I don't think I need the mic, I think we can all be fine. If you can't, we'll have hands down. Okay, I'm happy to listen to her speak after me. She had a lot of mind. She has a lot of things that she'd like to speak about when it comes to stewardship and public lands. I want to talk to you about my students. I teach at Mountain High School. I'm 12 years teaching in East Dearborn for Senator Mountain. When you all talk about due process being lost and people being snatched up off the street, and we talk about the gentleman from Downriver who was taken at Anderson Middle School, horrifying. One person in our community is gone. I spend more time in my waking hours, Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturdays, with my students than I do at home and with all of you. Speaking in different languages as I teach comes naturally, because that's what I do. But I've watched my desks get empty because their parents have been taken by ICE. They're going through the citizenship process now, trying to legal way. That's how people find them. They wait for them at home and they come home and work. And they take them. So the students then stop going to school when their whole family disappears. Or they only come to school a couple days a week. You know, school where they're getting food, which is more important now because they don't have mom and dad at home, making sure they have dinner every night. So I keep food, like every other teacher, in my classroom somewhere so I can make sure kids are fed. It's become more important now. But you know, when we talk about this every move, but I'm going to ask all of you, close your eyes for a minute, and imagine your class walks in, you got empty seats, or you're looking at faces, you got to teach about first, second, third class levers. Because what teenagers want to learn about that when they're worried about whether or not they're going to get home and find their family gone. But I'm not pressed about it. But I kids who have to leave my robotics team because they're pretty sure their mom is leaving the house now because she's not documented. Or trying to run my own underground network at school because my own superintendent won't step up and communicate with us about what's going on. So I'm running my underground network to try and make sure that parents and families can get their power of attorney documentation taken care of so that if kids do go home and find their parents gone, they don't end up in the system. Because school is more a safe place to go. But now there's so much miscommunication and mixed messaging, nobody knows that schools are actually safe. So, again, I'm going to ask you, we talk about it at every move. David Anderson. I walk in my classroom every day and I look at less students in their desks. And then I look at their faces and I see the trauma they're going through, the trauma their classmates are going through, they watch them go through trauma. And then I think to myself, how the fuck am I going to teach them? How do I teach them physics? They don't care about it right now. And yet, still they rise. And they learn from me. So if my teenagers can do it, then sure as shit the rest of us can keep our heads up and our shoulders back and keep doing the next right thing. Stop tearing them down. We need to make a problem. You want to make it up? You want to? Yeah, but we don't do the next right thing. Think about children. I know, we want to think of ourselves because it's in our pockets. But think about their faces.
For all of us in Downriver, it sounds like you have been on the front lines of a lot of this work for a long time. So thank you so much for doing that and for sharing those stories today. And let's stay in touch, especially as some of these cases continue, to help be of assistance and however we can.
Thank you. That's more of a response than I got for sure.
Well, I'm not totally shocked, all right?
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm 31 years old. I've had a lifetime of unprecedented, once-in-a-lifetime moments again and again and again of just like 2008, housing market, 9/11, recession, again and again. My friends have been dosed. My friends have been fired for their passions of what they've committed their lives to. My friends are willingly choosing not to have children because we do not see a future where it is morally or ethically sound to bring children into this life. I am not from this country. I have been grateful to be raised here, live here, and be a part of this community. But it is terrifying to be in this America now And it is also so wonderful to see the community come together, voices being heard, our representatives making themselves known. You are my only representative who I call when the flag calls out, Debbie, that gets back to me, who has ever responded to me more than once. And I am calling every day on multiple topics. You are the only one, not Gary Peters, not Alyssa, especially not Gary, we have beef. But I just want to say thank you. And like everyone else has mentioned, it takes a community to fight for our community, to protect our children, to protect our youth, to protect our high schoolers that are graduating, to give them hope for something better. So that is how I would like to close. And also keep defending our public lands. Once we lose them, that is the gem of America. There is no one factual.
Heard some really good things tonight. I'd like you to engage your media director more and do what Steve Bannon said, flood the zone. Because this young gentleman doesn't know anything about the Democratic Party. All we see on YouTube or anything else is a bunch of Trump crap. Okay? The stuff you're doing at the hospital, the stuff the little stuff, no matter what it is, I remind you, it needs to be out there in front of the people. Understanding that the Democratic Party is actually doing something and not having the perception that you're not doing anything wrong. Because people don't read. It's the YouTube crowd. Everybody's watching TV. You know, it's about memes. It's about this. It's about that. You know, it's all media. So engage your media folks. Okay, and I've written you 6 times, by the way. Twice, and I appreciate
My
that.
staff is now freezing because I'm going to find out where those are. I get a lid every single day. We call, what do you call it?
I get it.
Manners.
The other thing is, I've read or heard that the Congress had given up the power of tariff and gone to the executive branch because of the emergency. I want to understand from Congress, you, what do you do about that?
So first of all, we didn't give it up. Donald Trump just kind of took it by declaring an executive order. So we are fighting it tooth and nail. There's actually, there are a couple of different, a bill related to Canada passed the Senate with several Republican votes. And we've got several bills. Greg Meeks, the chair, no, not chair, someday again. The ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. It's not us. The Foreign Affairs Committee has filed a privilege resolution, which will have to come up to the floor. A Republican who's a friend of mine from Nebraska has filed a bill to take, what we're going to do is repeal the executive order that he did by declaring the national economic security crisis. So we're fighting it every which way. So I think you will see, the president understands, he's still trying to do all this. Look, you know, tariffs can be okay, but what he's doing is just absolute lunacy. So we are fighting it, and that's how we did it. We never gave up the power of trade. He took it by declaring it national.
But I don't think there's an emergency down at the southern border, and I don't think fentanyl is a problem.
Well, it's not. In Canada, give me a break.
Canada's got a bigger problem with us sending weapons to Canada.
Well, I mean, we're going to lose. I'm very concerned about what's happening in Canada. Canada's are going to. I wanted to organize a rally. They did do one, but it wasn't down in this Detroit saying, "We love you, Canada. You're our friend." It just showed the support from here. So we are fighting on the tariffs, and I'll make sure I'm giving you more information. So I want to talk about Democratic messaging.
Okay, I'm gonna say one more thing.
You may.
Donald Trump.
Donald
Trump is a non-empathetic, been campaigning for 4, maybe 8 years. If he didn't win, he was going for it. Right? He's in office. You don't care. Washington Post says you don't care.
Billionaire.
You have to fight fire with fire. Will you support Al Green's initiative to impeach Donald Trump?
If it comes to a vote, I would. Right now, I'm not saying we should try. Look, guys, I've been one of the biggest fighters of Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't like me, and he goes after me regularly, which I should wear proudly.
In front of the public, that is showing fight, which the Democrats are not showing.
Okay, so I'm going to say several things. I am going to say there's still a fight, but I think we got to stop this physical. What happened to Governor Shapiro over this weekend is not okay. And you don't have any idea of how many death threats I looked at the chief and said, boy, a lot of, and he goes, we're not taking any chances. What we are doing, anybody, in public service, Republican or Democrat, and the physical violence, the threats, it's not okay. And every last one of us needs to stand up to those kind of threats against anybody, whoever you are. Donald Trump incites that kind of rhetoric and that violence. And that's not. All of you need to help us. What the Republicans have is not only, yes, they've got Fox and they've got Newsmax, they have an echo chamber. And we need to get that echo chamber as well. So we need to get influencers, and when somebody posts something, we need you to send it to your friends and your friends to send it. We've got to be doing more podcasts. We've got to be doing more digital. That's, quite frankly, I'm chair of the EPCC and trying to do that and get Democrats to open up and do it more. Now I'll tell you something. I'm listening to you tell me you got to take more credit. And the nuns raised me. I'm a Catholic girl. And Mother Margaret taught me never start a sentence with the word I. Agreed. That's what we're trying to do, is get more people.
On that note, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. So it's on our campaign websites usually, or our official website. So I'm at Darren Camilleri, at Senator Camilleri. She's at Debbie Dingell. She's at Rep Dingell.